Hello everybody, my name is Silvia Walukiewicz. For several years I have been working as a life and personality coach, as a psychologist and as a sensitive and mediumistic consultant. I also give workshops and seminars on various topics of spiritual development. A crucial topic that I often see in my clients is that many of them rationally understand that it is important to allow emotions to be there and to let them flow. However, when the emotions are there, they struggle with putting it into practice. What's more, many people believe that they are unable to trust again after they have experienced a breach of trust, or that they are unable to truly love again after they have experienced profound emotional injuries. Some people immediately lose hope. Others try it again, but notice after a while that their past recurs. Why is that? What is the reason that many people know that it is crucial to give space to their emotions, but struggle with putting it into practice when they are in an emotionally challenging state? Why is it so difficult to profoundly trust or love again after having made painful experiences? Firstly, I would like to go into the question, why do so many people continue reacting with their old behavioral patterns, although having the resolute intention of accepting their emotions? Our behavior with emotions has been influenced by several factors. On the one hand, through the imprinting of society and our ancestors. On the other, through our natural aversion against pain, even though it is only emotional pain. Moreover, every one of us has created various strategies in order to not be confronted with one's own emotions. These strategies are mostly present since childhood and therefore have been perfectly exercised and can be immediately and automatically applied. A better understanding of these avoiding strategies can help to get rid of them step by step. Through my own personal development process and through the work in my practice, I have recognized the 4 following behavioral patterns: suppression, flight. Here I distinguish between inner and outer flight, ignorance, and the so-called victim role. I have subdivided these mechanisms into active and passive behavioral patterns, because in my opinion, to suppress an emotion or to fly from it is rather an active process, whereas just ignoring it or staying in the victim role can be rather classified as a passive process. In the following, I'll outline them a bit more in detail. While listening, find out if you apply one or more of these mechanisms, or maybe you know others who apply them consciously or unconsciously. The first active mechanism, the suppression of the emotions, is one of the most toxic ones, because all of the present emotions and the related stress are immediately suppressed from the consciousness into the subconscious. The stress remains stored in the physical body and thus cannot be processed. What's more, using this method, we unlearn to perceive ourselves and our true emotions. We are usually taught how to suppress our emotions already in our childhood, through sentences such as, "Don't be sad," "You don't need to be afraid," or "I can't understand why you're angry." Other possibilities are when our emotions are completely ignored, or even that we are laughed at because of expressing emotions. In such moments, we learn unconsciously that it is wrong to feel this, or start to create associations that it's better to reject emotions since they are not acknowledged by society. The second active mechanism is the so-called inner and outer flight from emotions. By outer flight, I refer to when people start to fly into outer activities, when they don't want to truly perceive what is going on inside. It could be that they consciously or unconsciously start to work more in order to perceive the sadness less intensely or to compensate the low self-esteem. Another possibility is that some people start to do sports excessively, to drink alcohol, to gamble, or to do other activities in excessive ways. What's more, to orientate oneself predominantly towards the outer world, or to be particularly interested in the lives of others, may be a flight mechanism in order to avoid the look inside oneself. Moreover, judging others is also a type of flight mechanism to not perceive one's true emotions. The other flight method, the so-called inner flight, refers to when one directs one's attention towards oneself but still doesn't focus on one's true emotions. Instead, one gets worked up about being angry or starts to judge oneself. The first passive mechanism, the ignorance of the present emotions, on the one hand is a bit more energy saving compared to the first two methods. On the other, it constantly and subliminally influences the perception during the whole day. This method is used when one knows that one is unsatisfied in their relationship, or rather upset about the present situation at work, but just accepts it passively and so ignores the present emotions. Another way to ignore one's emotions is to whitewash everything, even though one is emotionally hurt. This happens, for example, when one gets stood up by the partner and continues to come to their defense instead of taking care of one's emotions, even though one is deeply hurt by this behavior. The second passive mechanism, the so-called feigning deaf or playing the victim role method, is about letting oneself be dominated by the emotion and giving up responsibility for them. For example, when something displeasing happens, one dramatizes it and stays longer in the challenging emotion than would be necessary. One mentally repeats the emotion-evoking situation and therefore intensifies the event-related emotions. In this moment, one is neither perceiving the emotions for what they truly are, nor taking responsibility for them. Instead, one is dramatizing everything and playing the victim role. On balance, by applying one or more of the presented methods, the true message of the emotions is not profoundly perceived. Since these mechanisms have been so perfectly adopted, it can be that we don't notice them as avoiding strategies. What's more, we neither perceive that we create more and more distance from our true selves, and therefore our emotional wounds cannot be healed. In the following, I will elaborate on the avoiding mechanisms and will show some methods how you can heal your emotional wounds and how you can start to trust again, feel profound love, and become free from past emotional constraints. I wish you exciting insights about yourself and a lot of healing.
Hello everyone! This short video is about how you can accept your vulnerability more and more and how you can integrate the lost soul pieces. As mentioned in my last video, vulnerability is really something very huge and important in the life of everyone. And it's really difficult to explain it in just a few words. However, in this video, I would like to focus on some mechanisms, the so-called avoiding mechanisms, which many people use in order to not perceive the emotions for what they are and in order to not be confronted with one's own vulnerability. Through my own development process and through my work with my clients, I have discovered that many people have really like 4 basic patterns which they use in order to avoid perceiving what's really inside. I have divided them up into active and passive mechanisms. So the first one is the suppression mechanisms. I have talked about it in some of my previous videos, and I think you already know these mechanisms from your own life and from your own way how you deal with emotions, or maybe you know somebody who suppresses their emotions. So suppression is when you perceive the emotion, it's there. Maybe you are sad or you are angry or you feel alone, but you don't want to feel that. You don't like that feeling. So what are you doing? No, I don't feel anything. Just suppress it. You just suppress it into your body, into your energetic system, in order to not feel that and to not be consciously aware that you have this emotion. So in that moment, you are cutting off vulnerability of yourself and you're also cutting off some emotions. And this creates a lot of stress in your energetic system. Then the second active mechanism is the inner and outer flight. Yeah, I called it like that because it's, for example, you don't want to be confronted with your emotion or with your vulnerability. And when you're using the outer flight, you start to do some activities in an excessive way. So, for example, you do sport excessively, or you work a lot, or you meet a lot of friends, and really like every evening you go out in order to not be alone and to not be confronted with your sadness, or you do other activities in an excessive way. So this is the outer flight. Or also when you judge other people, then you really are concentrated on the outside world instead of concentrating on your inner world. Then the inner flight, I call it like that because you're concentrated on the inner world, but anyway, you are not really confronted and not really perceiving what's going on inside. So the inner flight is, for example, when you're sad or you're afraid of something, but you don't want to feel that, so you start to feel angry. You just start to feel angry about having these emotions or about being in that situation. So once again, you don't focus on your real emotions, but you focus on another emotion, which maybe is easier. Usually to be angry is easier than to be sad or to be afraid of something. The other inner flight is to judge oneself. So to perceive like, why did I do that? And I'm so mean and I'm such a bad person. So you're not really perceiving the pain or the emotion or your vulnerability, but you start to judge yourself. So this is, in my opinion, an active mechanism of not perceiving what's really going on inside. Then let's move to the passive mechanisms. I call them passive because you're not really doing something about the emotions. So one passive mechanism is the ignorance of your emotions and of your vulnerability. So for example, let's say you feel like sad, or you're always angry about how your boss behaves, or you're not really happy in your relationship, but you say, yeah, I'm not happy, but I can't do anything about it. It's like that, I have to accept it. It's normal after 5 years of relationship. You know, you don't have the passion anymore, and you're not anymore excited about seeing the partner. It's normal, I have to live with that. So you feel the emotion, you know it's there, but you're passive about it. You ignore it. You don't do anything about it. So, and you don't really confront yourself with your real pain, because there usually is more pain under the present emotions of like being sad or unhappy. The other passive mechanism is the so-called victim role. So that you are, for example, sad or angry or you're afraid of, and you like swim in that emotion. You exaggerate it. You say like, oh, I'm so poor and my relationship is so bad and my boss is so mean and I can't do anything about it. But the difference between these two mechanisms is that the victim role is like more intense. You perceive the emotion more intense and you talk in a more intense way about it. Here you just say like, I can't do anything about it, it's like that, and here you really exaggerate it. So I hope I could explain you this a little bit better. Now I give you an example how they are connected to not really perceive your vulnerability. I'll take the example of feeling alone. So let's suppose you feel alone and you're home alone, maybe your boyfriend left you some weeks ago and you still feel alone and you don't like that feeling. So, but there is a wound behind it which needs to be healed and transformed. And maybe there is something you need to integrate, some soul pieces you have lost through the interaction with your ex-boyfriend. So if you use suppression mechanisms, it is when you are alone and you feel like maybe sad or you are not happy about that. You say like, okay, I'm alone, but I don't want to feel that. My life is okay. I do my best. I don't care about it. I don't want to talk with him anymore, and it's okay. And then you are like very strict with yourself and very mean with your vulnerability because you're not accepting it. You just push it away. You suppress it, and you pretend that everything's fine. But the feeling of being alone is still there. You just don't perceive it. Then, if you used the inner or outer flight, in that case, it's, for example, you are home alone and you really feel the loneliness and you don't feel happy about it, you start to work too much. So maybe you stay at work until 9 p.m. Or you start very early in the morning, or you start to do sports every day, just in order to not feel that loneliness. But once again, the loneliness is there, and it will not be healed as long as you're not confronted with that, and as long as you not transform it really deeply. If you choose the inner flight, it's like, you know, I'm so mean, and I'm not really beautiful, and I'm not a nice person, I'm not worthy, so I'm guilty that he left me. So I'm responsible for being left by him, but you are not looking at your loneliness again, you just look at something else. And you create new beliefs and new energetic states which are not really necessary. Or maybe you start to be angry about it. Yeah, so you start like, oh, why did he left me? And why should I stay here home alone? So in that moment, you once again are not confronted with your vulnerability, with the vulnerable part which is communicating you that you feel alone. Yeah, that you avoid that and you go into the emotion of anger. Why so complicated? Human beings really create strange things sometimes. Another possibility is when you take the ignorance mechanism. So like, I feel alone, it's normal, you know, when the boyfriend leaves, left me, you know, then it's obviously that I feel alone because we have spent so much time together before, and now I have every evening free, and I'm alone, and that's it, and I can't do nothing about it. This is the ignorance mechanism. Or you choose the victim role, also very, like, how do I say it? You lose a lot of energy when you use this mechanism. So you're so poor, your boyfriend left you, and you feel so alone, and nobody is there, and you can do nothing about it, and you are such a poor person. You're exaggerating it. So I hope you know what I mean. And in all of them, you are not confronted with your true loneliness and with the emotional pain you maybe have experienced during and after the relationship. So you're always running away through these mechanisms from yourself. You do everything to run away, and even if the confrontation, maybe it's painful, but when you start to really confront yourself with that, it can be released. And some even minutes later, or maybe some hours, you're fine, you know? So, in that moment, how could you integrate your lost soul pieces? So, in that moment, you can, let's take again the relationship example. You can check it from the beginning till the end, or till the present moment. Like, how did you feel at the beginning? Did you feel like connected and not alone, that you felt that your boyfriend was there, and from which moment it started that you began to feel alone? So for example, maybe he started to go more out with his friends, and you stayed more home alone, and then you started to feel alone because maybe you suppressed the emotion or the soul piece of connectedness. Maybe you started to think like, I'm not so important for him, so we don't have such a connectedness. I don't believe anymore in the connectedness, so I suppress it, and then you started to feel alone. But in that case, it was your decision in the past to suppress this soul piece, and you don't have it anymore now in your conscious mind. In that moment, it's important to go back to that situation and to really perceive that moment of your decision to suppress it, and to go through these emotions of being lonely, of emotional pain, to really maybe cry it even out, and then to go mentally back. Maybe you were sitting on the sofa, or maybe you were lying in the bed, or to really imagine that you are there again. Because energetically, your soul piece is still there in the past. And if you mentally travel back into the past, you can integrate it, you can take it back. So try to mentally go back into this moment and to imagine, okay, so before I felt a connectedness, do I want to feel it again, yes or no? And then probably your ego will say, I know, better not, because then I can be hurt again. But then I will ask you, so do you really want that the past situation destroys your future? Do you really want that because of one moment, maybe two or three, it doesn't matter, that you will not have this emotion of connectedness anymore? Ask yourself these questions out of a higher perspective. And if you say, okay, yes, I'm ready to integrate it again, and I try to do my best to really feel the connectedness again in my new relationship and to feel complete again. If you have that decision, then say, okay, I really want to feel it again, and remember a moment where you felt it. So before the decision, you felt it. So maybe connect that person to you in the past and start to perceive it again in your body. And you can also go into some past moments where you have experienced the connectedness very profoundly, and to activate it again in your system. When you have done that, it's important to reactivate it time and again for 1 week or 2 weeks to really integrate it and to perceive it constantly in your system. So, and of course it can be done with any other situations. So, I hope I could explain you these things a little bit more, and so that you really can see that these mechanisms are not really the best to accept your vulnerability and to feel complete again, so that you can maybe decide or observe yourself if you are starting to use one of them, that you can interrupt this immediately and start to really perceive what's going on there. For example, the loneliness. Why do you feel lonely? Where did it start? What do you want instead? What emotions are connected with that loneliness? And really to ask yourself the real questions: how do I really feel about the situation? And how do I want to feel about the situation? And then you can choose to go the way back to the past situation and integrate your lost soul pieces. So if you have any questions, please write me an email, call me, send me a text message, whatever. I'm really happy to support you in your process of becoming complete again. So I thank you for watching this video and see you soon.